Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How are you? I'm excited to be here. This is the second Gov Exec Live event I've done. If you were here for our first one in February, I interviewed Robert Shea. We've decided to upgrade our speaker this time. He was not invited back. He's also my boss, so if he's watching the live stream, hi, Robert. So George, I was listening to what Margaret was talking about. I liked what she said at the end about it was empowering, right? Why not? Because my frame of reference, being in Washington for almost 20 years, is all the reasons why not. And I know that a lot of federal employees struggle with that day in and day out. Having been a federal employee, I ran up into a lot of those obstacles. You have great ideas, you want to try to move the ball forward, and every time you try to do it, there is a why not. So, George, can you talk a little bit about, in your experience, some ways that you've seen that have been effective in taking this framework of the President's management agenda, which I think has widely been received as the right types of management changes to be making? Mm-hmm. How do you materialize that and make it real in the day-to-day work that folks are doing in agencies?
Great question, Adam. Thanks very much for attending this morning. We're excited to talk to you a little bit. I think when you think about why not, that comes up a lot more than why you can do things and why you can be successful implementing transformational change in technology or customer experience improvement or improvements in the workforce. And I think when you're a leader in government, as you work on trying to make change, you're going to encounter multiple obstacles. And you have to find ways to be resilient, to be able to navigate through those changes that you inevitably encounter as you're working to be a transformation agent. As Margaret talked about this morning, the things that we're working on, focusing on in the PMA, have been challenges for government since its inception. And there's really nothing new here. We need to modernize our technology systems. The government spends more than $90 billion on technology. Adam and I have worked with Thornton for a number of years to survey federal chief information officers and get their perspectives on what their biggest challenges are. Modernizing applications and making them secure and effective at serving customers is consistently a challenge that they cite. And they've been working hard at trying to navigate through that challenge. There's more to do, for sure. But I think, so when you talk about why not, who can disagree with the fact that we need to improve our technology in the federal government, right? It's something we all agree on. We just need to make sure that we're committed to it and try and find creative ways to energize our people and focus our resources so that we can work on modernizing that technology that we have.
So, George, one of those innovative ways I think is the MGT Act. They've created this fund. I think Margaret appropriately called it a little bit of money. When you think about 90 billion versus 100 million across government, it's really, I think I've been thinking more about it as seed money. One of the challenges that we do hear from CIOs a lot is there's no incentives to save money because I can't take the money that I get through an appropriations account and move it into something else. So even if I modernize, even if I move to a shared system that saves me operating costs, the money still stays in the same account. And because of the Economy Act, and I mean, there's a number of laws mostly from the 30s and 40s that prohibit the kind of fungibility of money. So this new innovation fund, how do you think agencies are perceiving it? Do you think that they are excited about it? They really want to kind of latch onto it and use that to have more flexibility in funding? Is it just too small to make a difference?
It started out, I think it was $3 billion when the act was originally conceived. We've got $100 million. I think that's great. It could be zero, right? $100 million is a lot of money. And I think that we're seeing some proposals that are coming in from agencies right now being reviewed by the executive board to figure out investments that are going to benefit agencies in supporting their mission and improving the way that they serve their customers. It's absolutely going to make a difference. I think what you're going to see is once these proposals start, and I believe that they want to initiate at least 3 by the end of June of this year, other agencies are sitting back. Not every agency put a proposal in. I think there were 9 or 10 agencies potentially that put proposals in. Other agencies are standing on the sidelines. They're watching this. They're going to figure out how it works, and I think you're going to see other agencies start to jump in. Because if you can get extra money to initiate something that you believe is a great idea that can really have an impact on the way you serve your customers in your agency and improve your technology, it's a great initiative to undertake. So I think we're going to start to see a difference. It'd be great if it were more money, but I think the nice thing about it being small, I think the increments that you'll see awarded will be probably $5 million or less for some of these initiatives. The way that we're implementing technology effectively is not to throw hundreds of million dollars at an initiative and spend years doing it. We're trying to build incrementally now. We're using agile development and building concepts that we can then be successful at in pilot stages and then rolling them out across agencies. That's the concept that I think they're focusing on TMF. It's great. I think it'll be very effective, and I look forward to seeing the proposals that are awarded soon.
Another key aspect of the President's management agenda, probably more so than any previous management agenda that I've at least worked closely with, is a focus on data. I know a lot of the conversations you and I have had around data management, even from a costing perspective, or how much money are we actually spending on IT. I think there's a nice round number, but if you drill down into agency budgets to understand the intricacies of how funding flows for IT, it's actually very difficult. Talk a little bit about what you see from a data perspective. We have new initiatives. We just got our first year of data set from the Data Act, a full year basically of financial management data from the accounting systems of agencies rather than procurement or other management systems that have been used. The technology business management is getting a lot of buzz right now. How are agencies using data to try to move things forward? This is different than saying you get an extra 10 million, right? What are agencies actually doing with data to improve management?
I think, data is really the foundation of the way the government fulfills its mission and serves its customers. And really understanding the data that you generate and how to use that data to make organizational decisions, I think, is critical for all agencies. It's something that most organizations struggle with. I read somewhere that by 2024, the government's going to spend $16 billion to store redundant data that they don't use, because there's a huge proliferation of data. Just think about how much data we have right now through phones. Everything's automated. We have video. We used to be, you talk to someone on the phone. Now it's just proliferation of data. So how do you understand what data you have, where it comes from, and then use that to make decisions? I think that's a challenge for all organizations in data. We spend time helping multiple customers with data management models and enterprise data governance. You have to have a strategy to figure out where that data is, how it's generated, and how to use that. The government has also been working on opening up a lot of the data that they have and allowing it to be used as a strategic asset by third parties. I read an article that there's a group down out of the North Carolina, Chapel Hill, who took data from NOAA and lots of other areas to do some modeling to look at where the Coast Guard should station its ships and its people after hurricanes. And this data came from multiple sources, but they were the great models that helped the Coast Guard save lives as a result of this. I think there are multiple examples of how that data could be used effectively like that as a strategic asset. But there are more opportunities, I think, to get more effective at that and work on improving it.
I also, you're making me think too. One of the things that I think doesn't exist, we're starting to get it with open data schemas, metadata on government data sets, but there's no strategy government-wide necessarily for how to integrate this data across agency silos, right? So a lot of times we'll go in and we'll say, agency A, here's your data strategy, here's where all your data sets live. But increasingly, this data is flowing across agency lines. And I think that's kind of a big opportunity that probably won't get tackled for a while, unfortunately. But how do we create an ecosystem of government data that can flow across agency silos so that agencies can take advantage of the data from other agencies? So one of the other things I was going to ask you, George, is will we ever be done with IT modernization?
Well, I know that I have to upgrade the software on my computer at home, and I'm constantly needing to get a new phone. So every time you put in a technology that's new, it gets old in a short period of time. So I think the answer is unfortunately no. We're always going to need to modernize our technology. The key is how do we go about that? Technology modernization is, I think of it as like a forest. It's not really, trees. As we're trying to modernize our systems, it's a web of interconnected applications and pieces of hardware and networks. And if we want to modernize those systems, how do we go about that? And I think it's important for those that do that to really step back and analyze all the different trees within that forest and figure out which ones need to be modernized first. And if we take down one of those trees and stand up a new one, how's it going to impact the other trees in the forest? What's critical, what information sits in each of those different things. So coming up with an algorithm or a method to be able to prioritize the way you go about modernization, I think, is very important and something that agencies have started to focus on. Being able to sort of lay it out in kind of a dashboard to show that interconnectedness, I think, is very important for agencies. Modernization, as you said, is never going to stop. We're going to need to continue to focus on that for quite some time.
I am in the process of applying for passports for my daughters. We're going to Canada in August, and didn't know that you don't need a passport to go to Canada, but you need a passport to get back into the United States. That's a key tip before you leave to go to Canada, not after. So I've interacted with government services at the federal level a fair amount. The passport application process is fine. I'm going to say it gets like a B for me currently. I haven't actually gone and done the appointment yet. But let's talk a little bit about customer experience in some of these areas across government. It's been a focus for the last, certainly through the Obama administration. They had a couple hiccups. But worked real hard to improve on that. What are agencies doing now? Is this really a focus for those kind of customer-facing systems? And talk a little bit about customer. I think a lot of times when we say customer, which I don't technically like, it's too businessy for me. But customers, there's a variety of customers. There's citizens trying to apply for passports. There's other offices within your agency. There's other agencies that interact with each other that are also can be seen as customers. So talk a little about customer experience and some of the trends that you're seeing right now.
I think customer experience is really the foundation for government agencies of why they exist. You're out there to fulfill your mission, and in doing that, you're supporting your customers, whether it's the agriculture department and you're supporting farmers, or you're working at FEMA and you're taking care of citizens that have been affected by a natural disaster. So a question for agencies is how do we interact with those customers? And as Adam said, they're internal and external. We found that I think a lot of agencies don't spend a lot of time really thinking about ways in which they interact with their customers. What messages do we have? How do we interact with those customers? Through what channels and platform? And I think it's important for all agencies, especially now, given the focus of the PMA, to really step back and look at the ways in which you're interacting with those different customer groups. How are you impacting them? What do they think about the service that you're providing today? And how can we come up with more effective ways to improve that service? Farmers.gov was put out not too long ago. It's a new website that allows farmers in rural areas to figure out how to interact effectively with the agency. Before that, there was a lot of paper-based forms, and it was very difficult to figure out who you needed to talk to interact with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They looked at the way that they were interacting with that key customer group and figure out creative ways to come up with some improvements for it. I think as you look at government and the way in which it interacts with its citizens, I think there are opportunities to optimize how you interact with those organizations. So I think the first key is really to step back, understand those customers, how you're interacting with them, and then the way in which you're doing that, and come up with a plan to make some modernization improvements to those applications and methods.
The USDA one is a good example too, because it was, I think, 3 or 4 different bureau level organizations within USDA that all had touch points for the same community. So you can't necessarily within your one agency figure that out. It has to be done at a higher, it has to be coordinated at a higher level. And that's kind of where you get into these obstacles and the why nots, right? The first agency might say, yes, of course, we're really going to do this. It's going to be great. But if you don't have the other groups on board and the leadership bought in, you're not going to make the kind of gains, I think, that you're looking for. So we're about out of time. I think we have time for one more short question, George. If you had one piece of advice to share based on your experience in management and government, what would it be?
It's hard to come up with one, but I think you need to be resilient. Because if you're trying to be a transformation agent, you're never going to engage in a transformation effort where everybody says, yes, this makes sense, I'm on board, let's get it done, and have it happen like that. You're always going to meet resistance, whether it be an old piece of legislation or people who don't agree with what you want to do. So you have to find a way to empower hearts and minds, as Margaret said before, to get folks on board. So you need to be resilient, you need to be creative in finding ways to get folks on board. And I think one of the ways that I think folks can be successful in doing that is to try to identify the outcome. What's the end game and why are we doing that? And what's the benefit of that to the folks in the organization or our customers? And then once everybody can agree on that, you can work on outlining how you can encompass that change. So it's going to be a long journey to effectively, make the transformation that we're talking about today, and whether it be customer IT modernization or improved customer service or improving the workforce. But I think it's going to pay great dividends.
Well, great. Well, thanks everybody for being here today. I've certainly enjoyed chatting with you for a brief time. I hope you enjoy the rest of the program. There's some great speakers coming. Some of them are my friends, so please be nice to them. And look forward to seeing you at a future event.
Thank you.
Thanks.